Scandals, folks. When you got sport, there's going to be some kind of scandal. We're going to go through 5 of rugby's biggest scandals, at least ones that I can remember from my lifetime. I'm trying to look at ones which are not necessarily just guys punching each other on the field. I've kind of left the sex scandals to one side, the drunken tomfoolery. I've tried to go with largely kind of on the field scandals as much as I can, or at least kind of directly related to the game. We'll go through them and you guys can let us know your thoughts. I've also written up a piece for this one for Planet Rugby, so if you want to check that out down in the description, there's plenty of good info there and on Planet Rugby's website generally. First one, I'm going to say Susie. Susie at the Rugby World Cup 1995. Accusations of food poisoning. Couple of days out from the 1995 Rugby World Cup final, and the All Black squad goes down with a massive case of food poisoning. I think more than like 2/3 of the squad are spewing their guts everywhere. One of the security guys mentioned it being like a case, like a scene from Saving Private Ryan. It was just that disgusting. So, yes, undoubtedly, the All Blacks got sick. Whether or not it was deliberate food poisoning kind of remains a bit of the scandal. The All Blacks coach at the time, Laurie Maines, insists that his team were poisoned, and he heard that there was a staff member at the hotel who poisoned the tea and the coffee with some kind of substance to make them sick, and then she disappeared the day after, which was kind of refuted by the manager of the hotel at the time, who basically said the staff ate the same stuff as the players and everyone was fine. As I said, Laurie Maines got his point of view, and some would refute it. The security detail chief, his name was Rory Stain, he went on the record saying that undoubtedly the All Blacks were poisoned, and he thinks it was deliberate, and he thinks it was betting syndicates who were trying to shorten the odds on the final. Whatever the case was, certainly the All Blacks were sick. I think he said it was the Thursday before the game. So by game day, many of them had kind of gotten back to better states of being. Jeff Wilson was still clearly pretty crook. You can see him kind of dry heaving in some of that 1995 footage. But John Olomu was fine. Didn't manage to score a try. Still a bloody close game. Still a classic final. But still has one that has a bit of a scandal about it. The next one, I'm going to call it Zubers Run. This is referee Craig Joubert, who is, some referees have just been in the headlines for the wrong reasons, and this is certainly one of them from Craig Joubert. Cast your mind back to 2015, so much longer than the 1995 World Cup final. So this is the quarterfinal between Australia and Scotland. It's the final of the 4 quarterfinals. The other 3 have all been won by the All Blacks, South Africa and Argentina. And this one goes down what should be a classic. It's got like 8 tries. Scotland have got a narrow lead going into the final phases of the game. They've got a line out. They overthrow the line out, and the ball kind of bobbles. The ball bobbles to the point where it comes off Nick Phipps, who's an Australian, which goes backwards from his line towards the Australian line. And one of the Scottish guys grabs it. Sadly for the Scots, Joubert thought that it had come off a Scottish hand, so it was being taken by a Scotsman in an offside position. And I can see why he thought it was bouncing and bobbling everywhere. So it's a wrong call, but I wouldn't say one that's an egregious call. Personally, I'm not a Scot, but I could see why you would think it came back off a Scot, because it looks like it comes back off a Scot initially, but Phipps does get a hand to it. Now, Joubert says he's not allowed to use the TMO for this one after the fact, which is, again, that's fine. Ideally, you'd like them to use the TMO and that kind of thing, but I'm also on the side of don't stop the game with TMO for everything. So the fact that he doesn't use the TMO and that he just calls it as he initially sees it in real time, I don't have a problem with that. So far, we're not at scandal territory. But Bernard Foley kicks the goal, Australia win, and then Joubert just gaps it. He just sprints off the field, which I think without that, it's not as scandalous. Now, he later goes on to say that he'd seen earlier in the tournament there was like a kind of off-the-field issue with some of the English coaches and the refereeing or the officiating team. So he was trying to avoid some kind of like, I don't know, uncomfortable situation. But when you just run away, it makes you look guilty as sin. So, yeah, I think without that running off, it doesn't look like a scandal. It's just a bad refereeing call, which happens. But, man, running away and all the explanations he's done after the fact, they don't do it any favors, man. I mean, if you make a mistake, geez, you just got to own it. And he seems like he's owned it to a degree, but he's still, I don't know, the excuses about why he ran off the field, kind of pretty poor. Some people called it disgraceful. Next one, the salary sins, or Saracens and their salary cap breaches in Premiership Rugby. Not every competition has a salary cap, or at least they're managed in different ways. The Premiership has a salary cap, and Saracens breached it in multiple ways. Now, any competition that's got a salary cap is not immune from having salary cap breaches. Punishments for salary cap breaches are done in different ways. In some competitions, you can be stripped of your titles in the years that you broke the salary cap, but not so in the Premiership. So what the Saracens guys did, their chairman, he ended up kind of investing in companies owned by some of the players. I think it was largely property investments and whatnot. So he's essentially giving money to his players in a means which is not just their salary, not their kind of paycheck stuff, but they are still getting paid. So with that bolstered squad full of internationals, and Saracens would say a lot of these guys are academy products that they should be kind of able to keep. But, you know, because they're all in, a lot of them were England stars, their salaries, you know, pretty high. They did a bit of interesting bookkeeping to keep these guys in the squad, and they had an incredibly successful time. They were found to have breached the salary cap between 2016-17, that season, and the two following seasons, so 17-18 and 18-19, during which they won the Premiership twice, and they won the Champions Cup twice. So they beat Exeter Chiefs twice over that 3-year period. So you think maybe Exeter would be awarded the titles, but no, that's not the way it works in the Premiership. There's no proviso for a punishment of being stripped of your title, so they're still the champions for those 2 years. The Champions Cup doesn't have a salary cap, so essentially they didn't break the rules of the Champions Cup, so those two titles stand, although they wouldn't have had the squad they did to win that if they'd been obeying the Premiership rules. So that's kind of there for what it's worth. So yeah, they keep all their trophies. They did get punished. They got relegated from the competition. They got fined. Their chairman resigned. But yeah, man, you had the star-studded squad, which was all conquering, and you people wondering, man, how do these guys keep under the salary cap? Well, they didn't. Next one we've got is a bit of an oldie, but I mean, I've got the 95 World Cup on the board, so why not? Grannygate. Do you remember Grannygate? Back in the late 90s, when people didn't really do their due diligence on checking player eligibilities, the two most famous cases were Shane Howarth and Brett Sinkinson, who are both New Zealanders who went on to play for Wales, claiming to have a Welsh grandparent. The trouble was, neither of them had a Welsh grandparent. Sinkinson went on to qualify through residency for Wales later on, but Howarth had already played for the All Blacks, so he was essentially locked in as having played 19 times for Wales in era, basically, when he was not eligible. 19 times, including the 1999 Five Nations, where he scores a try against England. England lose that game 32-31, and that game stops England from getting a Grand Slam. So Scotland end up winning the Five Nations. So if Howarth's not playing, who knows? Maybe England win that one with a Grand Slam. But yeah, turns out neither of them were qualified at all. People didn't do their due diligence properly, and it's by no means been the end of that. Scotland were implicated at the time. Romania has since gone and done it. Spain more recently has gone and done it. Italy numerous times apparently had guys with Italian great-grandparents represent them, but not grandparents. So yeah, the punishments are a lot stricter now. Like Spain got the absolute book thrown at them by being disqualified from the World Cup. Whereas back in the Granny-Gate days, it seems like the consequences were not so heavy. So yeah, you got to feel for Spain a little bit. But yeah, you got to get that right, I guess. You got to get your paperwork done. The most scandalous one, though, for mine, I'm not really ranking these in any order, but this one, Bloodgate. I actually don't like gate being attached to everything to mean scandal. I don't know how that happened. I know because of Watergate, but why does everything become a bloody gate? There's no gate, but Bloodgate. Bloodgate. Do you know about Bloodgate? I wasn't watching the Champions Cup back in 2009, but even I know about Bloodgate. So it's a 2009 semi-final between Harlequins and Leinster. It's a tight game. There's like 10 minutes to go, I think. 6 points to 5 is the scoreline, and Harlequins' regular goal kicker Nick Evans has gone off earlier in the game injured. But they want to get him back on in case they need to kick a goal to try and win the game. So how do you bring him back on? Well, you're allowed to bring him back on if you've got a blood replacement. But nobody's bleeding. So what do? They send on the physio with a blood capsule, like the ones you use for Halloween to be a vampire. They give it to Tom Williams. He comically puts it in his sock, and later on when he tries to find it, he drops the thing, and apparently he's red-green colorblind, so he's trying to find a red blood capsule on green grass, which is tricky, but eventually he finds it, shoves it in his mouth, chomps it down, he's got blood, so he comes off the pitch. The commentators at the time are like, what happened to him? Like, they are clearly suspicious. Michael Cheika, after the match, clearly suspicious. As he's coming off, Tom Williams winks at the playing staff, which is a bit of a dead giveaway. But, yeah, Evans comes on. He has a shot at a drop goal, but he misses it. So, kind of no harm, no foul in the end of things, but yeah, pretty bad look. Pretty blatant cheating. So, yeah, was there consequences for this? For sure. Harlequins ended up getting fined. Their boss, Dean Richards, got a 3-year coaching ban. The physio got a 2-year ban. Williams, I think, got initially a 12-month ban, but was reduced to 4 months. So for pure on-field scandal, the Bloodgate one for mine probably takes the cake. Like I mentioned, there are other scandals, like certainly if you know those rules about props, being replaced, and what happens if you get a guy red-carded and you've got a prop who's gone off and you can't replace another prop, you're going to go down to 14 men or whatever, or 13 men. Those rules come from the fact that teams used to do dodgy things with their replacement props. Like if their scrum was getting dominated, they would say that their player's injured, so they would go to golden oldie scrums, all that kind of stuff. Like there's been cheating in that regard before. Like I mentioned, there's been all kinds of drunken incidents. Like, I'm not going to go into them, but there's certainly been plenty of off-the-field scandals. Some of these are kind of off the field to a degree, but hopefully kind of relatively directly related to the game. But there you go, 5 rugby scandals. You guys let me know any other scandals that you reckon deserve to make some kind of list of the most controversial scandals in rugby. As I said, Planet Rugby down in the description is the article version. But yeah, you guys listen to your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.